Got you. Are we live?
You certainly are.
Welcome everyone to FJMC International's annual International Men's Day gathering. We're so happy to have you here. This is a wonderful day. I'd first like to introduce to you Bruce Tomar, FJMC International's Executive International President. Welcome, Bruce Tomar.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Raucher. So I just want to introduce the program and then we'll get started. So good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. My name is Bruce Tomar. I am the president of FJMC International. I would like to thank and congratulate our International Men's Day team for putting together this beautiful 4-day event. And welcome to FJMC's inaugural International Men's Day celebration. Today's episode, Brotherhood and Belonging. At this time, I just want to invite you to refer to your Zoom invite for the times and schedules for tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday's sessions. International Men's Day 2025 is a global observance that celebrates the positive contributions and achievements of men while addressing important issues affecting men's health, well-being, and gender equality. This day provides an opportunity to promote discussions and actions that support men's physical and mental health, encourage positive role models, and advocate for a more inclusive society. FJMC, through its continuing mission to promote safe and non-judgmental men's communities, and through our many initiatives, provide men the opportunities of personal growth and to build relationships in brotherhood. We hope that these conversations bring new meaning to your life and bring you closer to the true meaning of our organization, friendship, Judaism, mentorship, and community. And take it away, Rabbi Raucher.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. Since this is the first time FJMC is hosting this opportunity, we have in our tradition a way of signifying a first of things. There has truly been a great deal of effort moving to this day. There has been a wonderful committee and team behind this efforts. I want to thank Bruce Tomar, Jerry Brodsky, Bruce Fagan, Lisa Pollock, John Norton, our whole team for helping us put this together. This has been a really wonderful time planning and creating and getting to this moment. So, friends, let's please all start this moment by saying Shehechianu, because this is a sacred and necessary conversation that moves us to the future and provides meaning in our lives. So please join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'hegianu lazman hazeh. Thank you, our Lord, our God, ruler of the cosmos, who has enlivened us, brought us to this day, and enabled us to enjoy such a sacred conversation. Thank you all for being here. Yes, there are some very valuable things that FJMC is providing to the world. So I want to make people aware of that before we get into our larger conversation and before we introduce our guests. I will also ask anyone in the communities who have joined us, whether you are individual or watching as part of a larger gathering in your synagogue, please take an opportunity to identify yourself and where you're coming in from in the chat box below. We would love to know where people are coming from, and if we can continue the conversation with us, please leave your contact information, at least your email address in the chat box if you feel comfortable, so we can reach out to you in the future. With that in mind, there are some wonderful things that FJMC is offering the community in the next couple months, right now, in the next couple months. We have the Wellness Warriors Challenge, which is FJMC's opportunity to fight obesity, particularly in men. And so we are challenging everyone to sign up, to donate money, and to get out there and walk. Right, the signing up and the donating money, right? We get that, right? But it's really about the walking from October 16th to December 13th. So there's still time, my friends. Sign up, get out there, get your feet moving, and help us fight obesity with awareness and with your contributions. Don't forget, we also have the Show a Yellow Candle program coming up in order to be a light for the Jewish community and beyond, to help fight anti-Semitism and to raise awareness of these type of events of anti-Semitism and also the Shoah, so we can stay aware and fight this type of stuff with vigilance and knowledge. Speaking of knowledge, FJMC offers a great pair of opportunities in Build a Pair to take this time to build relationships over a lovely Jewish ritual that is tefillin. And so you can take a look at our Build a Pair project and get that going with your kids because it's a lovely way to engage over a wonderful Jewish tradition that allows you to literally build your own pair of tefillin, which should be just in time for Worldwide Wrap on February 8th, 2026. This is FJMC's, what's that? It's our marquee event. This is the one that put us on the map and continues to bring us a lot of fun and joy and meaning in our lives. It's a chance to actualize that mitzvah of binding ourselves to the Jewish tradition and also each other in stronger bonds of what it means to be a man today. And that's exactly what our conversation is about, friends. So I'm going to stop this share. We're going to dive into our conversation about what it means to be a man today, because that's a precious thing in our world. What it means to be a man, particularly since men have helped build this world and men are responsible in many ways for the destruction of this current world. We need to know what it means to be a man on the grand global scale and also in individual personal ways. And so we've got an amazing panel joining us today for this conversation. I want to thank them again in advance for their time and for their wisdom. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes together. And if you have questions throughout this conversation, please post them in the chat box as well, and we'll try to address them as the conversation moves on. But first, I would like to introduce to you to Meredith Jacobs, the CEO of Jewish Women International. Meredith Jacobs was originally, Meredith Jacobs is CEO of Jewish Women International, which was originally known as B'nai B'rith Women. JWI is dedicated to ending violence against women and girls. Since assuming the role of CEO in 2020, Jacobs has shepherded the development of numerous JWI initiatives, advancing efforts to end sexual violence, build access to financial empowerment, and advance women's leadership. In the aftermath of October 7th, Jacobs led JWI's partnership with the Seed the Dream Foundation to launch I Believe Israeli Women, a global movement standing in solidarity with Israeli women and fighting the denial of and disinformation about sexual atrocities committed by Hamas. Jacobs is an award-winning journalist and former editor-in-chief of Washington Jewish Week. She is the author of The Modern Jewish Mom's Guide to Shabbat, HarperCollins, and co-author with her daughter Sophie of the best-selling series of interactive journals, Just Between Us. Prior to joining JWI, she founded modernjewishmom.com, the first Jewish parenting website, which is now part of Kveller, had a long-running column in the Baltimore Jewish Times, and was the host of the WYPR radio show connecting family and the Jewish Channel television holiday specials, Modern Jewish Mom. Named one of the 50 most influential Jews of 2020 by the Jerusalem Post, Jacobs is a sought-after speaker, moderator, and writer. She has appeared on MSNBC and the New York Times. Her opinion pieces appear frequently in outlets such as the JTA, E-Jewish Philanthropy, and The Forward. She is a member of the advisory board of Jewish on Campus and serves on the Women's Economic Empowerment Council for the state of Maryland, an advisory council to Brooke Learman, Comptroller of Maryland. Jacob served as the expert panel on improving access to services for domestic abuse victims in the military, sponsored by the Department of Defense. She earned a BA in English from Haverford College and holds a Master of Science in Business from Johns Hopkins University. Thank you for joining us, Meredith Jacobs.
Thank you. Thank you for including me. I'm honored.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rabbi Shawn Israel Zevitt serves as lead rabbi at Mishkan Shalom in Philadelphia, PA. He's committed to the integration of meaningful spiritual living, lifelong learning, and acts of caring and social justice, and has spent decades consulting to and supporting congregations, organizations, social justice, and sustainability initiatives in the Jewish and larger world. He has a background in theater, film, and playback in Toronto and Philadelphia. And is a recording artist with 6 CDs on new and traditional liturgical and spiritual music. He is the co-founding director of the Davening Leaders Training Institute and is the director for the Aleph Hashpa'ah Spiritual Direction Training Program. He is also a liturgical recording and performing artist and is one of the founders of the progressive Jewish men's organization, Menschwork.org, and author of Offerings of the Heart, Money and Values in Faith Community, and numerous publications for spiritual life. Rabbi Zevitt is a graduate of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College and has personal ordination from Rabbi Zalman Sector Shalomi, Zichrona Livracha, and the Aleph Alliance for Jewish Renewal. Rabbi Shawn Zevitt, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. You made it through that. My
Really evolved. I thought I could make it through Yom Kippur services. If I can make it through the bios, then I suppose it's anything. And I also want to welcome our friend and dear friend to FJMC International, Johnny Parker, Seaboard Vice President, Executive Vice President, who is a longstanding and beloved member of FJMC. Johnny Parker is the father, I believe, 4 boys.
Yes, sir. 4 boys, 3 grandboys.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so Johnny is a wonderful asset to our conversation today, and I couldn't be more grateful for his time as well. Johnny, thank you for having us or for joining us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, friends. So now that we've done the introductions and we've done the shameless plugs for programs and things like that, let's actually get to our conversation. We live in this post-October 7th world where the Jewish community has been just insurmountably changed by any number of factors relating to Hamas's attack on us on October 7th. A different quality has been required of what it means to show up in the streets as Jews. And naturally, this changes the way we carry ourselves as Jewish men. The larger, theme of this conversation, of this whole, event of International Men's Day, is brotherhood and belonging. Today, we're specifically talking about what it means to be a man, in this post-October 7th world, but also with an eye towards, Jewish names being in the media like Epstein and Weinstein, and what that means for workplace values, and also how Jewish men carry themselves with the power and the authority that they have. Not only that, but we know that there is far more demand on men in general for what it means to show up and lean in the home. That men are being required to understand what it means to have and take part in emotional and domestic labor, the invisible labor of the household, so that they can be more present and divide things more equitably with their partners. And then we also know that there's generally a concern out there for men's mental health and spiritual well-being, that loneliness amongst men is on the rise, that friendship amongst men is dropping drastically generation by generation, and that men really do seek communities by which they can be seen and understood, and that they can grow personally and spiritually. So that's the question I would like to pose to our panelists first. We're going to start with Meredith Jacobs first in that conversation. And the question is, what does it mean to be a man today, taking into account everything we've just brought into the context?
Thank you. Speaking not as a man, but as someone who works in this space, and also the mother of a 26-year-old son, I think it's very hard to be a man today. I think there have been a lot of messages from when the Me Too movement exploded, a lot of challenges that came from COVID that make it very, very hard for young men and all men. Some statistics are 45% of men ages 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person. 25-year-olds today make less than their parents and grandparents did at the same age. There is social isolation, boredom, ignorance that is turning our young men to social media, which is a very dangerous space. The messages of the manosphere are toxic and very anti-female. And I think what we have to do is dismantle this phrase of toxic masculinity. There is cruelty, predation, abuse of power, And those words can exist without being equated to masculinity. And so I think we have to redefine what it means to show up as a man in a healthier, more positive way for our young men. And I know we'll be getting to more of this conversation, but I cannot imagine what it's like to be a man today with all of the very, very negative and toxic messages that have been given to what it means to be a man.
Thank you, Meredith. You bring up a great point about the use of the term toxic masculinity and that type of impact, and especially in speaking in general. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Let's go to Rabbi Shawn Zevitt. What does it mean to be a man today?
Well, fortunately, I feel blessed that I'm going to answer it as well from the Jewish perspective, because living in multiple civilizations as we do, that can, include a variety of different male models that we have the benefit from, I think, in the blessing in the Jewish world. So I don't just look at today. I look at the lineage. I look at the role models that my great grandparents, my grandparents gave me, and the multiple times that Jewish identified males have morphed and met different times, right? And that includes when we had kingdoms and warrior types, as well as yeshiva buchers, pasty, in European halls. And then now today, when we're interacting, I think the complexity for us as Jewish men in particular is we're interacting with a lot of different inputs beyond the inputs that we might have traditionally gotten. I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing. I certainly appreciate, Meredith, what you're saying in the larger culture, as well as the vestiges in Jewish life of patriarchy and models that did not serve men or women. And I think the great thing about the questioning, hafochba, the ability to turn the letters around to see this and this are the words of living divinity and the life force itself, is we don't have to get stuck in one model. So I think that part of the question is, what are the systems we are in? Are we around people that make us feel smaller or bring out our larger selves? I have had mostly trans-identified male rabbinic students for the last 6 or 7 years, and they bring me into a mindset too that's not just binary, but also invites me to think of, oh, what am I assuming it means to be a Jewish man today, and how does that play across gender identities, not only Jewish and larger American identities. So I just want to name those pieces too, and our ability to meet some of the issues you've identified here, Rabbi Noam, and also Meredith, you mentioned too, is to also take a look at what the possibilities are. Because there's a certain negative culture about those things that just piles on guilt and shame that many men, especially younger men, or confusion that many older men. I'm about to turn 66 myself, so But coming off of the Jewish Men's Retreat, the annual one I just did, where we had more men under 35 than ever before. And part of that was actually making sure they could afford to come, in that and getting sponsorship, but also seeing them go, I've never seen men so embodied. I've never seen men, openly as emotional and supportive of each other. And that's how I am with my friends. So there's a multi-generational approach we need to take about this, as opposed to Jewish men, one cut, et cetera. Some of that's even geographic. Jewish men living in the one shul town in Boise is not the same. Oh, I don't like that place or that group of Jewish men. I'm going down the street in the urban center. So there's socioeconomic, there's culture, as well as gender identity issues that we need to factor in. But we've got lots of great role models, to draw from, as well as the ones that our younger men are creating that we can partner with. And the last thing I'll say in this, there was a moment I was at the annual Aleph Kala in Baltimore this summer, and there were 25 younger members that were a part of a special program just for them, unwritten again by somebody who said, we got to get this younger generation there. We can't just say, pay the full freight and we'll see you there, given some of the statistics you just mentioned, Meredith. And one of them walked up to me and said, we've been tasked with Havdalah. We would be so blessed if you would be an elder and give us a blessing for that ritual. And I looked around and I saw, bless him, Rabbi Arthur Waskow, Zichron Livracha, who just passed away, a dear friend of mine, sitting there, and other of my mentors, male mentors. I said, oh, no, you must mean those guys, right? Not me. And they said, no, we mean you. And I had that moment of resistance. And then I went, I'm being called now. set aside whatever you have right now. You are being called by a younger man to be an elder and give them a blessing. This is where you need to grow into. And it was such a poignant moment and so appreciated. So part of that is how we rise to the Jewish male call through the generations. And that's why we sing every service, Lador Vador. It's not Medor Lador. It's not from generation to generation. It's this generation and how we relate between to this generation. So thank you. And if you vote for me, okay, back over to you, Rabbi Noam.
Thank you for that, Rabbi Shawn, very much. That was lovely. I think you've provided us some wonderful also threads to take up later on in the conversation, particularly thinking about that intergenerational responsibility. Meredith, in the pre-conversation that we were having, brought in Scott Galloway's, ideas in his book Notes on Being a Man, and the idea of the ultimate expression of masculinity being to take responsibility for a child that doesn't belong to you. And we can get into that later on, the specifics of that, but it's just making me think about this intergenerational notion. And I certainly appreciate that idea that you brought to the fore. Thank you for that. Johnny, please, we'd love to hear from you.
So what first comes to mind is my 4 boys, and our rearing them to the point where they love me today. They'll call me from various parts of the world to say, Dad, how are you? Dad, I love you, etc. So I thought about, what did I do? And I showed up. So showing up as a man meant changing my mindset from my earlier years as a young man. I didn't grow up Jewish. I chose Judaism late in my life. Actually, early in my life. I was in my young 30s. So I'm 65 now. So, but my boys, I fed them every day. I cooked dinner every day, every night. I still cook dinner every night for my wife, for myself. If I want to eat, really, it's for me so I can eat, because my wife's not going to cook. So that personal part of me is what I'm most proud of. And when my oldest son is 42, my youngest son is 33. One son is in China, one son's in Berlin, one son's in London, and my oldest son is in New York City. My one grandson in Virginia and one in New York. But that's my most proudest, I think, accomplishment in my manhood, if you will. Also, I was a young entrepreneur. I was a military guy, and I was pretty sharp. I was a smart guy, and I rose up in rank early. So I had people who are higher ranked than me that I was in charge of. So I had to learn how to be a leader of my elders in essence. And it was a tough battle because I had to be the boss. And that was a very successful career. I did 8.5 years in the Navy, got out the Navy, and then I went into the real estate business. And then, it was a struggle, but I started having success in my young 30s. And you get a lot of envy, you get a lot of jealousy. And I'm a young man. I don't look like I'm supposed to own this building. A police officer told me once when my car was stolen, that kind of thing. So I think for me, my mother instilled in me the best thing ever. Always be proud. Always go for what you want, and you can do anything you want. So, and I think a lot of young men today, and when I query them, I say, well, what do you want? Well, I don't know. And how do you not know what you want? Where are you going to go? So I will never stop wanting to be a better person, to be a better man, to better help my community, my society. So, COVID happened, and then I'm sitting here going nuts. I said, well, I'm going to start law school,
right?
Because I have nothing else to do. So that's how my mind works.
Right.
But I realize everyone's mind doesn't work that way. But I do understand that we all have a special gift from the Holy One. And we have to grasp what those gifts are And, you know, I've learned through the FJMC, which I take my hat off, my yarmulke off. I've learned to read Torah, have Torah, lead all the services. I've been to 11 conventions, but I always show up, okay? In my local market, I show up for morning minion on Monday and Thursday. I was asked yesterday to read Torah on next week, not this coming Monday, but next week. And I always say yes. Even if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to learn it. And that's what I think it means to show up. I started out with tapes and video, you know, and then one more point, passionate davening, which I learned from Rabbi Chuck Simon. I mean, when I daven, I'm a passionate davener, and people who know me knows that. Minion of comfort. I learned to do a Shiva minion from the FJMC. I learned to rap to fill in through the FJMC. And then I get a phone call as a volunteer and I end up on this panel. So I think showing up allows you to, I think it manifests into what it is. Sometimes it's Hashem's goal, whether we know it or not. So I believe in our young men still. And I believe in our older men as well, because they're equally important. And I think part of this goal is to get more of us. I think we all love Judaism. We all love the Holy One, but we need to show up, especially in synagogue.
Okay, so let's
go. Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's talk about that for a second, because the theme of showing up is really important. You know, showing up as a man, what does it mean to be a man when you show up, that sort of thing. So I appreciate you bringing that, Johnny. And I want to start with you since you're on this beautiful thread already. And then we'll go in reverse order as we've been doing. So Johnny and then Rabbi Shawn and then Meredith. You know, this idea of showing up for other men was also a conversation piece between Katie Couric and Scott Galloway. And I realize it was also part of last week's, not this past Shabbos, but two Shabbases ago, the Parsha Vayera, where it says Abraham Vayigash, right? Abraham stepped forward, which is the same language that we use for Judah when Judah wants to plea on Benjamin's behalf. When you know, Joseph, acting as Pharaoh, goes through this whole rigmarole to test the brothers' loyalty and growth. It says Yehuda Vayigash, right? Judah stepped forward. So the language of stepping forward, as you say, is natural for Jewish men. You talk about it on a personal level, what it means to you to step forward and that it's brought meaning to your life. Why do you think, though, even outside of the context of a minyan and outside of a context of a synagogue, why do you think it is important that men know it's important to show up for each other?
So I'm a very jovial. Everyone I meet, I say hello to or shake their hand. How are you today? And I think people, a lot of men that I'm talking my kids' generation, okay? My boys don't think like I think. They said, Dad, you and Mom work, you guys are crazy. You work too hard. Okay? And we're not gonna be like you. And I'm thinking, but you're spending my money to live in London, to live in Berlin. Okay? I have an apartment there. You know, they're on their own now. This was early in the game. But my kid in China, he said, Dad, I lived on $1,000 a month as a teacher in China, but I had no overhead. I saved every penny I made because they gave me housing and food. So a lot of our kids are leaving our country and going to different cultures in order to have a different quality of life, if you will, without all the capitalistic, I think, stress, if you will. That's what I think a lot of that. And, you know, I learned to appreciate it when I started taking a little bit more time off for myself and realizing, okay, I need to do more of this before I, you know, burn myself out. And I think, you know, this rigorous, I mean, it's like this, guys. The average house is $400,000. Okay. And a young person, the average person who's buying, first time home buyer, 40 years old. So I think I don't know. I think there's an easier way to live. And when I went to Africa, to Uganda, that's an easier way to live. They still love Hashem and the Holy One in a deep way, but the stress of life can kill you. And I think as Americans, there's a lot of stress in our lives.
It sounds like what you're saying, that showing up for each other means understanding in certain ways what we're going through, right? That the experience your children are having is very different than the experience that you had in terms of home buying and generally kind of cost of living and the experience of living in America, and understanding what they're going through from a compassionate perspective is part of what showing up is about, right? In a non-judgmental sort of way.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Rabbi Shawn, I posed the question to you, particularly in this, intergenerational thread that you bring up. Why is showing up for each other so important for men?
Again, I'm thinking of, and one of the things you had mentioned to me before was trying to bring in certain spiritual or ritual thinking around this. So I'm trying to also heed your call as well as be in the larger thread here. And I think like the language that we use, the Amidah, right? Every prayer service, it's called the rising prayer, the standing up prayer, right? And at every service, I invite people to take a moment and think, what are they standing for? Or Aleinu l'shabeach, what are you willing to take a stand for at the end of the service? Because now you're going to go out in the world, and will you have just cogitated these ideas, or will you become lech lecha? Will you become the blessing that you seek to be? So I think it's suffused in our tradition. An aliyah, I'm going up for. We don't have a bima in our synagogue. It's an old factory. So what does it mean to rise up? Clearly no one's going up a set of stairs to get anywhere. So it's rising up in oneself, even if one physically can't rise. I think of actually a young bat mitzvah woman that her focus of her Devar Torah was on the difference between being a bystander and upstander. And I think a lot of our tradition, and I think what it means to step forward as a man and as a Jewish a man of any identity marker, and as a non-Jewish man, because I realized an omission before, two things, that I would have wanted to have said before. One is to take a look at the many cross-cultural identities, Jews of color through Jews that present white, and those Jews who present white that refuse to accept the new tag of white that didn't exist before the Second World War. We were people of color along with the Irish and all the rest of it, right?
Right.
So it's a newer designation that we shouldn't resist, nor should we just buy into automatically. So just in thinking of all of that, we have a tradition that constantly asks us to take a stand for something. Vishamru on a Friday night, we stand generally for that. Why not the other prayers? Well, because we're the guardians. So what are we the keepers of? What are our values set? And something I recently learned, leadership in particular, for many of us here who have leadership roles, is fraught today. It's not only a paradigm shift in American and global Jewish life, it's a shattering and a reforming. We don't always live in what we can see as historical times. And I think most of us sense we are in a time such as that, not a time that's coming, but what's happening, with us right here and now. And as a man, I've found that I need more resources, particularly as I go older. Not only my spiritual director, but a somatic therapist and an osteopath, as well as the regular doctor. That thinking of physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual well-being can't omit any of those. And in my recent session with my somatic healer, he said, you're dealing with so much right now. The whole life cycle, Israel, Palestine, climate change, people's spiritual needs. You can either try to withstand it, or you can stand with it. And he said, you will not survive trying to withstand everything coming your way. You will only, and he's not Jewish, he said, think of your ancestors, stand with the times and do it in a healthy way that includes when we stand aside, because perhaps it's a a moment for a younger person, a female identified person, LGBTQ plus, someone of a different socioeconomic or cultural venture, or maybe it's an opportunity for us to mentor and to relax the roles we've been holding on to and be side by side with someone to say, Gabai, right? From Gav, you're back. I got your back. But that doesn't mean I check out. That means I stay in, I take a stand with you. So those are just some of the things I think we can offer, each other, and men and women and however people identify in terms of gender that way, an opportunity to co-create this next shift. Yeah. Clearly, I don't have
Thank you very much for
feelings
that.
about the matter.
No,
I think we're doing.
I was about to ask you tell us how you really feel.
Right, exactly. No, it's
yeah.
an energizing conversation in a positive way. I appreciate it. I didn't expect to feel such passion for it, but this is what it calls forth. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't deny that, there's a real brotherhood element of this that's really personal and important to me. And so that'll obviously take some work with my own therapist and my coach. But I do appreciate that everyone's part of this conversation and providing that energy with us. So thank you, Shawn. Meredith, I posed the question to you as well. What does it mean to show up for each other, particularly? And why is that so necessary for men today?
Thank you. I know there was so much from what Johnny said that really resonated. First of all, Johnny, thank you for your service. My son is a Navy lieutenant, and he calls me every day as he drives into work and when he's deployed, when he can message. And one time I asked him, I said, Jules, what did Dad and I do right? What did we do that gives us? And he said, Mom, you were there. You showed up. And whether that was sitting with him on the sofa watching some show that he loved, or taking him to the zoo in the rain and the snow because he loved the animals, or driving 10 hours to a lacrosse tournament, like, we were there in ways big and small. And I think that's critically important. I think there is a lot of social isolation. I think there's something, I don't know, that makes it hard for men to reach out to each other. I don't know what the messages were, but unless there is that established group, there's the youth group, there's the fraternity, there's the military, there's the men's club, whatever it is, I know my husband will say to me, Meredith, what are we doing this weekend? Relying on me to make our social plans. And I don't think that's unusual. I see my dad now at 88, who his friends are now, a lot of them are gone. Friends he used to go to the movies with and play golf with and go to lunch with, and that isolation that he has. And I think about men as role models. And this was something Rabbi Zevitt was speaking to. I think our kids do what we do and not what we say. And I know that my husband every night at dinner would thank me for cooking. And he just did. It wasn't kids, thank your mom. It was, Meredith, thank you. This was delicious. And he didn't have to thank me. Of course, I'm going to make dinner. But I see how both my son and my daughter, the way my son is as a young man, the way he treats his girlfriend and other women, the way who my daughter has chosen to bring into our life, who she dated, who she married, I think very much their ideas were formed by who my husband is and the way he treats me, and the way he treats them, and the way he treats his friend. So I think for everyone listening, what you do to show up and to set the example and be the role model in how you live your life, our young people are watching, and they didn't get these lessons growing up for some reason. And we need to pull them away from the relationships they're forming virtually and online. Because they're not, those aren't real. And in a world of remote workplaces, I worry about this generation.
I couldn't agree with you more. I have two young boys, ages 11 and 14. They're already within that bracket, if I could speak it, as a parent, right, where they're going to get exposed to pornography and the type of impression that's going to make upon them and their bodies and relationships and expectations of sex, where we're already in this huge conversation about consent. Right. And what does it really mean to show up in your interpersonal relationships in that way? There, is this element of leadership that I'm pulling from, everyone's, kind of thread. Johnny's talking about self-leadership and, how you know what you want, right? He talks to his kids or other kids from this generation. They don't know what they want, right? That's a real form of knowing what you want out of life and going for that and having some form of ambition, right? That is inspiring to oneself and inspiring to others, as Johnny was alluding to. And in Shawn's case, his, form of leadership is some ways stepping aside when knowing that there is other leadership, right, that can lead things forward, like in Joshua's case, right, when Moses has to pass the torch to him. But also that leadership is about showing up so that you can bridge the gap in knowledge and wisdom and experience, particularly on a practical level. And Shawn, if I'm incorrect in that, please correct me. And Meredith, what you're saying here is, right, the demonstration in one's own leadership to others, right, and what that means for their perception of the world and then the world they create for themselves in their own interpersonal relationships. This is absolutely fascinating.
If
I'm
I could
curious,
add,
yeah, please,
there was something else
please, yeah.
when Johnny was talking about his son saying, we don't want to work. I hear that from the young women on my team. They will say they don't value that I work as hard as I do.
No,
They don't aspire to that. They think there is a tension between achieving and success and having a work-life balance. And they
right.
don't see, so I think it's important also, maybe even more so as men in the workplace, they call it leaving loudly. So making sure that if you're in your work and you say, listen, tell everyone, I'm leaving today, it's my kid's baseball game and I want to be
Uh,
there. I gotta go because, it's my daughter's play or it's on the Shabbat, Dad. I know
yeah,
more and more. And, and I think this generation is changing also in lovely ways where it's not just the mommies dropping off at nursery school, the dads are there. We used to do this when I was a nursery school mom. Hey, you're dropping off. Let's all grab coffee. Find
right.
ways of bringing those young men together. But show how we can have a balance. There's also, I don't understand this at all. My nephew, who's in college, had a date with a young woman. He was really excited about her, and he was telling my son, and my son was like, "Great, are you going to ask her out again?" He said, "No, no, no. That's not what we do these days. We have to wait for her to ask." I
Wow.
can't ask her out. I'll be a creeper, I'll be a whatever. And
It's
this,
like the unspoken code.
yeah, and it was like, no. So how do we
Right.
show our young men
Right.
how they can step in a way that isn't predatory, that isn't
Right.
aggressive, that isn't how you can want things and go for things in life, and that's not a bad thing to be, and that you can have a full, rich life and achieve and work hard. I don't know what happened to her. And this is a generalization. I know there are plenty of kids who are ambitious and hardworking, but I think men's roles as role models is critically important right now.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Meredith, I did want to ask you specifically, what are women telling you?
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, friends, can mute yourselves, please. Thank you. Meredith, from your vantage point in your organization and your leadership, particularly of men in your own women in your personal life, right? What are women telling you that are they most want from men as partners and allies?
I mean, what anyone would want, the same as what you would say.
Hmm.
They want someone who respects them, who, my husband has always shown me that he believes in me, and that he supports me, and that we're partners, and that we're equal, and we want that respect. And I think some of the things that we do in our Jewish community, especially, I'm really talking to the group assembled here because I'm assuming there are a lot of men on this call who are lay leaders who are involved. And I think what's lovely about our Jewish community is that it feels very familial. It's very family oriented. And that is a challenge. So saying to young women in the community in working who are staff of the Jewish synagogues, the organizations you might be leading, you talk about them like, oh, you remind me of my daughter, you're so sweet, or you call a female rabbi by her first name, where maybe you would refer to a rabbi by his last name. These are like little messages that are disrespectful. I remember one time talking to one of my young staff, and I said to her, when I interviewed you, I thought, this kid's a rock star. And she was offended. And I thought, why is she offended? And it was because I referred to her as a kid, even though she was young enough to be my daughter. And so it's those little things to remember that we might, from our perspective and our age, think are lovely and warm and we're showing care, and are heard as disrespectful and infantilizing. And I know we're about to wrap up, but I wanted to say something really important if I could jump in.
Please.
COVID, JWI did a survey because there was an uptick of domestic violence. And we did a survey of Jewish survivors to see what the gaps were. And they talked about lack of access to affordable housing, to economic support, legal, what you would expect. But across the board, they said, we feel shunned and shamed by the Jewish community. And when I tell people that, the first reaction is, what are you talking about? And then I say, especially if their abuser is a macher. And then everyone just goes, mm-hmm. And like, shame on us that we see that. And what does that say about our values as a community? What does it say about how we view our Jewish men? And what will it take to change that?
I appreciate you bringing up that detail, and I want to open up this conversation further to Rabbi Shawn and Johnny, is particularly in talking about allyship and being a Jewish man and being a partner that way who really cares about the health and well-being and safety of their partners. Shawn or Johnny, whoever.
Johnny, you want to take a first crack?
Well, my partner, my wife Susan, is my rock. And we just had our 37th anniversary last week, and I'm not Jewish because of her. I'm Jewish because of my heart, but I'm glad I met her, and but it's we respect our home because we respect each other, and my kids respect my home. And whoever they bring here will respect my home. And if not, they will not be here long. But I mean, that's my essence, my wife. And I don't think, well, I look at women as an allyship in my shul. I mean, we have a strong women's league, we call not the women's league, but
Sisterhood.
The men's club, maybe sisterhood.
Right.
Without them, we're weaker, and vice versa. I think because we're balanced out, we help each other. I travel to a lot of shuls across everywhere I travel, abroad and in America, and women are very instrumental in making the ritual work on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. And my position is, I don't care who shows up for a minyan. We need 10 people. We need 10 Jews. And we're going to count you if you show up, if you've been vetted. And we have to do that everywhere because these life cycle events are critical to our coexistence, if you will, because we're all part of this together, So I've been pulled off the street to be part of a minyan in an Orthodox shul. So I guess I look Jewish.
Thank you, Johnny.
I use as a joke, but I walk Jewish, I talk Jewish, I daven Jewish, and I show up, and my wife shows up with me, and that's a beautiful thing. And Shabbos is the only time we really get together because we're both entrepreneurial, running our real estate companies. And but we have dinner every night. But Shabbos is we're going to temple on Shabbos.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yeah,
I remember when I was editor of the Jewish Week, I did an article about as more women were stepping into the clergy, as more women were stepping onto board, men were stepping back. Yeah. And it's not a zero-sum game, and men cannot exit our Jewish life. Just because women are now able to step up as leaders, it doesn't mean that there isn't space for everyone. And so I would also challenge everyone to stay, to serve.
There's definitely going to be a challenge at the end of this call to every participant. So when we get to that, you'll hear it. Thank you. Rabbi Shawn, what would you like to add to the conclusion of our conversation here?
Thank you. I'm just appreciating where this is organically going. I think because we talked a bit about systemic understanding before, to take a look at what's been successful and what hasn't. For example, checking in as one of the outside of the conscious men's work, I'm used to now for the last 30 years being one of a handful of men at anything. Sometimes the only person in that regard who identifies as male. So I think we need to ask the same set of questions that early and continued Jewish feminism asked, or now LGBTQ members, multi-faith, multicultural families, not what do we think will help, but what do people feel is welcoming, right? So it may be a bit of shoe on the other foot time. Oh my goodness, the sun is I'm becoming a spirit form here because this conversation is so powerful.
I can see it. It's a true blessing.
But I am still with you, my friends, we need to ask the question, what would make you feel more welcome? It's not just, oh, we're warm and fuzzy, but, did somebody invite me over for Shabbos? Did someone who didn't know me show up at that minyan, that moment in time? As I say to the young people next to me at their bar bat or brit mitzvah, you now count in a minyan, stay with me here. We're both going to comfort somebody who's standing up right now. That's what it means to be an adult, a young Jewish adult in that way. So I think we need to take a look at where inclusion can potentially produce barriers as well. I'm thinking of Joanne Friedman, who's a radical feminist, did an analysis on why in the 60s and 70s, predominantly white Jewish women were ascending to all the leadership roles in the early Jewish women's movement. And, and she was met with resistance because the answer was, well, everybody's included now. This isn't the patriarchy anymore. We're all welcome. But that didn't include looking at unconscious bias and how women of color were not lifted up as well that way. And only when those tougher conversations happened was there more of a kind of, oh, what would make you feel welcome in this conversation? I like to humor myself somewhat, to forgive the background screen there, but I know it says Shema to you, which is a reminder to deeply listen to each other, but it's in reverse for me, so it spells Amish in Hebrew. And so, so I think it's a gift. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's a gift to be free. I always take both of those messages as well, and how where the barriers might exist, just like in accessibility. Do we say Jewish men? And in my congregation, 40% of the heterosexual or two male couples, there's a non-Jewish partner. Am I then unconsciously saying, I know you're the one that drops the child off at Hebrew school and are the most active? Unlike the Jewish partner who's a little bit more still dealing with their wounded Judaism and hasn't become active again, but we don't really have a place for you. So we'll take the kid, but not you. And when that happens, ritually, socially, governance-wise, when we look at the high percentage of Jewish families that are not just Jewish partners, or in the case with my beloved Simcha, who's also birth name Susan, Johnny, is also a rabbi. So we're two rabbi households, and we even need to, and I'm in a blended family for the second time. I've been married twice. And each time I know what it's like to be a step parent, which is a huge number of men's roles these days. And I know now what it's like to be a grandparent with the step removed, because my 5 granddaughters just know that goofy Zeta Shawn, and when is he coming next, sort of thing. Or I got the call for the first potty moment by one of them before. Like the fact that she even thought of calling long distance, and leaving me a recording at 2 years of age, it reminds me of the imprint that we're making. So I think we want to talk about, what the grandparenting, not only the in-between generations, but the roles of men who can grandparent or can be younger men too, older men who don't have necessarily anybody to be in a mentor role. So we raise each other up. And that's very much the Jewish tradition, that co-arising. All right. So thank you.
Friends, I'm overwhelmed with just gratitude for your time and your wisdom. I know we're over time. I appreciate everyone staying, and I know we could probably go on a lot longer, but I want to leave everyone actually with a little bit of a cliffhanger so that they come to the other conversations. But this has been a great way to open everything up, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping us start this necessary conversation in the Jewish community for men and beyond. It will be available as recorded on the FJMC International platform for everyone. There are a couple things I want to share with everyone who's still with us, and so I'm going to speak a little bit slower but clearly to make sure that we get everything out. The first thing I want to say is this conversation has been beneficial from the perspective of talking about what does it mean to show up as a man in the form of self-leadership, in the form of wanting to build relationship with other men for the purposes of being there for them and as guides for them, for the purposes of being a strong ally and partner to those who are not men in any way, shape, and form, so that we can hear and we can be more aware and we can show up for them in ways that they need us to show up for them. This has been incredibly valuable in talking about how this matters when it comes full circle to how we ultimately treat people in our community. As Rabbi Shawn is saying about, we'll accept the child from an interfaith relationship, but we won't accept you. What ultimately does that say to the parent? And how do we create space for them, particularly if they are a non-Jewish man, and have an active role in that child's life? This conversation is invaluable in that way, and I look forward to all the other conversations it inspires. So I will say first and foremost, anyone who is part of this call, and particularly my brothers and the gentlemen here, I want you to think about how you show up today, how you show up as a man. What are the values that guide you? How do you lead yourself? But essentially, how do you show up as a man today? Talk about that in your communities if you're gathered now. Take a few minutes to think about it yourself, and just think deeply about that. And if you want to share it with us at FJMC, please do so. You can reach me at nraucher, Nraucher at fjmc.com. I'll put it in the chat box. Send me those responses. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The second thing is that we put a survey link to this event and the other ones in the chat box as well. Please take a moment for a brief survey about this event. It's 10 brief questions. We would just love to know your thoughts and gain more guidance as we move forward. Thirdly, I want to bring to your attention the other conversations that are going to follow after today's event. Tomorrow, Monday, November 17th, we have at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 7 p.m. in Israel, a healthy masculinity and mental health in Jewish communities with Dr. Gary Cates from CSUN, who's also Executive Vice President of FJMC International, Dr. Tara Lieberman, PhD, founder of the Jewish Community Mental Health Initiative, and Dr. David McCarty Kaplan, researcher, educator, evaluator, and consultant. And then also later in the day on Monday, November 17th, we have Real Talk Men's Mental Health Stories panel Q&A. Please join us for that open conversation. On Tuesday, November 18th, we have What Does It Mean to Be a Partner Today with Oren Jacobson, the founder of Men for Choice, Rabbi Ellen Wolnitz Fields of Women's League for Conservative Judaism, Rabbi Oliver Joseph of Masorti Olami UK, and Rabbi Ari Sachs of the Interfaithing podcast. And then on the 18th of November as well, later in the day, we have What Does It Mean for Jewish Men to Be Committed to Allyship and Equity with Rachel Gildiner, the executive director of the Safety, Respect, and Equity Network, Jerry Brodsky, the chair of the Inclusion Committee for FJMC International, and Rabbi Daphne Laser Price, executive director of the Jewish Feminist Orthodox Alliance. Finally, concluding everything on November 19th, that's Wednesday, which is actually International Men's Day. That's the day for truly celebrating. All our events and conversations will be leading up to that, in which we'll gather to talk about the experiences that they've had and the thoughts that they've provoked at the Global Men's Meetup at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and again, 7 p.m. in Israel. Friends, this has been a wonderful opportunity sharing this time and this experience with you. I want to thank our speakers again from the bottom of my heart for their time and their wisdom. Meredith Jacobs, CEO of Jewish Women International, Rabbi Shawn Zevitt, Philadelphia and Menschwork, and Johnny Parker of the Seaboard region of FJMC International. Friends, thank you for starting this conversation with us. It's truly been a blessing, which I've been taught in our tradition is a sign of abundance, a wellspring, an overflow. There is so much more that we can talk about, and this conversation is going to overflow into the rest of the week and hopefully into the rest of the community and into the rest of the world so that we can keep on talking and making men's lives meaningful and fun and joyful and Jewish. Thank you all very much for your time. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Bob Watts, for hosting this whole thing so we could actually get the conversation going. Bob Watts, you're amazing. You did a great job. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Join us tomorrow.